Hello, happy spooky season, and welcome back to the Midnight Horror Picture Show. Today's guest, Rachel Kerry, is an award-winning filmmaker and theater director who specializes in horror comedy, musical theater, and interactive storytelling. Her work has been hailed as unabashed extravagance by Time Out, triumphantly weird by IO9, and uncompromising parody by the Scotsman. She received her MFA in directing from Australia's National Institute of Dramatic Art and graduated cum laude from the University of Southern California. In 2024, she was selected to be one of 10 fellows as part of Filmshop's Breakthrough Series. And just last summer, her film Strangers on the A Train took the prize for Best Slasher/Stalker Film at the Screaming Room Film Festival at Midsummer Scream. I met Rachel last year at the Queer Fear Film Festival in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and we had a great conversation on stage about our filmmaking that I was excited to expand on for our listeners. Here's my interview with Rachel Kerry. All right, Rachel, welcome to the Midnight Horror Picture Show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Again, thank you so much for being here. We have a lot I want to talk to you about, but let's start off with introducing you to the audience. Can you give us a little bit of how you got into horror films to begin with, and where that got you to now?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'm based in New York City, and I actually started in theater, specifically as a theater director. And it's funny because in addition to horror, my interests are immersive theater and musical theater, uh, which doesn't necessarily make sense, but it made sense for me in my trajectory. So when I was doing theater, I was doing a lot of independent theater in New York City, and a lot of my work was like really campy and really like darkly comedic and was like maybe like almost horror. And then I went to grad school in Australia actually, and while I was there, I kind of realized that my interests were in horror and that I loved horror, and horror comedy was what I wanted to do all along. And then through kind of like exploring various paths and mingling immersive and musical theater and horror, I found film. So there we go. And now, ever since the pandemic, I've been really, really focused on film, and I've been doing a lot of horror filmmaking. So that's like the short version.
See, and that's awesome. I think unique to the people I've talked to so far is coming from a theater background. And I
Mm.
myself actually have a theater background. A lot of the actors I use are from theater groups that I've worked with in the past. And I think that's it's a different approach, right? Because your relationship as a director with your actors, whether you're using theater actors who are like doing film for the first time, or using regular stage actors but directing with theater tendencies, some of it doesn't always compute on a one-to-one, right? But I do think it opens up some great opportunities to really work with your actors and bring more physicality than maybe a normal film actor would have into a role, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know we're going to talk about projects and things we're working on a little bit later, but I just shot my latest horror short a few weekends ago, and I think all of my actors, I mean, we had a small cast, like 5 people, but all of them came from theatrical backgrounds. And knowing that we all had similar backgrounds in theater, it just meant we had a different shorthand. And I knew how they were going to approach text because, well, when I asked them what their training was, and then I was like, oh, okay, this is how you're going to approach it. Great. And then knowing what like film etiquette is, I could translate that and be like, hey, so we're not going to have as much rehearsal time as we're going to want, but we're going to have more rehearsal time than a typical like short film would. And being able to like bridge that gap and say like, okay, how can we do this quickly? We're on the same page, was really, really nice to have.
Right. And I didn't even think about it when first bringing up the topic about, yeah, the difference just in what would be pre-production, right, for a theatrical
Mm.
show versus, that's months of creating a character versus, maybe a couple weeks or like a handful of read-throughs or whatever that process looks like on production's end. But
Well, okay, for example, I found that in casting, we had a lot of really wonderful people audition for my project, but it often came down to, okay, let's say we have two actors. They're both really wonderful, but I think, this actor has just found the character a little bit more quickly, and I think this other actor is also really good, but they would need a little bit more time to find the character, which they would be able to do in like a 3 week rehearsal period. But I don't have 3 weeks, I have 3 days. So I have to go with the actor who I think has found it quicker.
yes,
And it's
no,
a bummer because I love working with actors to find things, but you can't always have that in film.
100%, 100%. In some of the first short films I did, in trying to work with actors who had only done theater, it was funny and like I I'm not trying to call out anybody, but there was this one younger actress who had came in and auditioned for us, and she got in front of the camera, which is 5 feet in front of her, and projected to the back of the room.
Oh
Like every
no.
line, and I was like, "Oh,
Oh.
sweetie, like no, that we can't do that here. You're peeking the mics right now." But it was very, because I mean, obviously theatrical acting is its own art, right? And it's very like everything has to be sold through over exaggerated posturing and gestures because the back of the house has to see it, every movement,
Yeah.
right? And to, I think, and I think that's like a good opportunity for a director to really practice their craft and be able to work with actors is like, okay, so somebody's never done this before. How do you tell someone how to act for camera? And granted,
Yeah.
on 3 days you might not have the time to do that. But if you have more time on a project and it's, like that actor's going to be great for a role and you have the time to work with them, like I feel like as a director, like that's a challenge for yourself that can ultimately, uh, I believe ultimately be very beneficial to a project.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. So, okay, while we're on this topic, because this was something I was going to talk to you about anyways, as a director with a theatrical
Mm.
background, what does that process look like bringing, your theatrical directing background to film? What what do you have to adjust and how do you work with actors that come from theater?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I find that having that theatrical background, I kind of approach it from two different angles. I think like in my pre-production conversations with like my gaffer and my DP, there were a certain number of things like topics where it was just like, look, I'm not going to know what I want this scene to be until I get into rehearsal. And like I have this one day, I know I'm going to have a few hours to rehearse with the actors in advance, and that's where we're going to really figure out a lot of stuff because my theatrical training is that you discover things in rehearsal. And that's where, like, that's like the Brecht quote, right? Like, I'm not going to paraphrase Brecht right now, but there is a Brecht quote about discovery in rehearsal that I like to hold to. So I think on one hand, I'm limited because I have to wait until that part of the process. But then once that happens, I can be like, okay, I know exactly what we're doing. And then I can speak more efficiently with like the entire team. And I think like a benefit to having a theatrical background is that like, so the project that I just shot a couple weeks ago, it was a 2 day shoot. It was two like 12-hour days. And it's like shooting a film in comparison to theater is like the being on set is sort of like combining tech week, dress rehearsal, and opening night all at once. And when you've done like a 2 week tech period, doing it for 2 days is like nothing. You're like, all right, let's go. And then it's over and you're like, wow, that was so short. That was so easy. So I think like theater really prepares you by uh by giving you a marathon to like train on, and then when you're doing film and it's more of a sprint, you're like, okay, got
I think
this.
that's a wonderful analogy. Yeah, absolutely. 100% because it is, traditionally such a much longer process. But yeah, doing that for weeks at a time and honing like not only like I think it's also from a production standpoint, like, okay, all of our lighting cues, all of our markers for different ins and outs and blah blah blah, all of our choreographing, or just scene blocking in general, like having that intrinsic to how you approach directing, right? Where you're already looking at like, all right, well, I know how I would block this for stage and what is the camera, but the audience. So, play open to camera, open to, you're not going to open away from camera. It's the same things. And I think that's how some directors, going through film school or what have you, whatever their training may be, don't may not always have those thoughts built into their directing process coming into it.
So you make a really good point, and something that makes me think of is because I have a theatrical background, but also I went to theater school instead of film school. So I feel like in many ways that helped me become more adaptable and become more accustomed to when things go wrong, because anyone who's done a play knows that, especially by your dress rehearsal, there's just like a million things going wrong all the time. And like I was trained to be able to kill my darlings and change creative ideas like on the fly, because you're like, oh, this light just will not light this scene correctly. Okay, let's reimagine the scene. What if this is what's actually going on instead? And sometimes you just have to make that decision quickly and move on. And that was a point of confusion with some of the members on my team, because I don't know if if it's really the same in film culture, because I would be like talking with my team and they, I'd be like, well, maybe we'll just have to change my artistic vision. And people would be like, what? Your artistic decision, like, excuse me, what, your artistic vision can change? You're willing to sacrifice your artistic idea? And I'm like, yeah, it's just a script I wrote. Like, I don't know, maybe this thing can change if like the limitations of our location don't allow an idea to happen. Maybe that's an opportunity for a new artistic idea. I mean, I wasn't like, throwing everything out the window, but like being open to change and being adaptable is really useful,
A
I
hundred
think.
percent. No, 100%. And you make a really good point because like coming from live theater, it's like the stake the stakes are so much lower. You don't get a take two, right? Like you don't get a take two, so like yeah, all right. So something doesn't work on the first take. All right, we do it again, I guess. It's
Yeah,
not the
yeah.
same. Right, right.
Versus
No,
like
I
somebody missed their line and now you have to figure out what's going to happen.
right, right, exactly. Yeah, you don't need to have the additional improv skills. It's just, all right, cut the line, and that's the whole thing though too, because I love where you're coming from, where you're talking about like, yeah, it made me more adaptable and more open to like really looking at making a film as a creative process and not this is my vision, this is my, and I get
Yeah.
that like I get that some directors are like that, and I think you should be like that to a point because, it's and I say to a point, it's like, hey, all right, you go in with a script, you have a film you want to make, don't get steamrolled by everybody else for sure, um into not doing unless it makes sense to you, right? Like
Hmm.
I think being open to the creative process, like that's what a lot of people, and I think this is more like a greener just starting out thing, but they're like, I have a vision, every word on the script, and it's like, bro, this is your first script, like this is your first time directing. I know you want to be an auteur like Tarantino or whatever, but like you're not there and your dialogue's not that good, but um you know
Ooh.
I'm
Salty,
just
whoever you're thinking of.
no,
This
but
guy is.
it's just like I I think maybe that's where it comes from, is like my own theatrical background, but I am very much like, hey, the script's always a living thing. If I wrote a line of dialogue and it feels weird to say, give me something better. Like
Yeah.
if you got a better way to say this that is going to say the same thing and hit the same points we need to, but it feels better coming out of your mouth because you're the actor and you're making this character. Like I wrote the character, if I wrote the film,
Yeah.
whatever, but I imagine this character and you are the one bringing the character to life, right?
Yeah.
So what does that look like? And if you're going to make a different choice, explain that choice to me because I want to see where you're coming from. And film is a collaborative art form just as much as theater. It takes so many people, and it's not just the director and it's not just the actors, but it's, combined in the production crew and the music and it's so much more collaborative than I think people just starting out get at
Mm.
at the time maybe. So speaking of that,
Yeah.
okay, what we talked a little bit before, and you gave me like a list of some of your favorite films.
Ooh,
And
yes.
I think you said something along, and I'm paraphrasing here, but you said something along the lines of that these films made you look at film differently, but also realize that it was something that you could do. So talk to me a little bit about that in like those films.
Yeah. Okay. Oh gosh. What a big topic. Like the
I know.
films that I thought were amazing and inspired me to want to make my own. Okay. I guess it just goes back to being like 15 in high school and renting Evil Dead and watching it. And just, I don't know, there's something about Evil Dead and knowing that this was just a group of kids in their like early 20s who like went down to a cabin and like made a movie, Sam Raimi and like Bruce Campbell in them. I think Evil Dead is a really important film for me in my like artistic journey. I say that and I feel like such a like a douchebag for saying it, but it's true. Um, but like, it's so theatrical and it's so ridiculous and it's so silly and it's also so scary at the same time. I think that's a really big draw for me in horror as well, is that like you can be really creative and you can be so ridiculous. I mean, it's like Sam Raimi made like these like neon green possessed creatures just like vomit goop on each other and tortured Bruce Campbell, and it's so fun to watch. It's so joyful, I guess. So I guess that's maybe an inspiration point. It's like you look
Yeah.
at Evil Dead, it's just so joyful. I'm trying to remember like what are some of the other films that I mentioned to you. I know like Climax is on there, and Climax is like the least joyful film I could like
Sure.
imagine describing for
Sure.
someone.
Um,
Um,
it was Evil Dead, Pink Flamingos, Climax, and
Pink
Soft and Quiet.
Flamingos. Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, okay. Pink Flamingos too, just because I think like Pink Flamingos and Evil Dead in particular are just like, just like groups of kids just getting a video camera together and making a movie. A really insane, what the fuck is this movie? And like like anytime anyone is like worried about like will the movie look good, will it be pretty, will like it's like Pink Flamingos is like the grimiest, dirtiest, like the just like the camera's sitting on a tripod for long periods of time, and that movie is what, like over 50 years old now, and people will still go and see it in the movie theater. Like I saw it in the movie theater like 2 years ago, brought my partner and I was like, watch this movie. You can, I guess what's it's really exciting to think that people can create works of art that are like not perfect, that are grimy, that maybe don't have the best acting or the best of anything, but are made with such like passion and gumption that they're still wonderful and people will still watch them decades from now. That's really freeing, I think.
That is it, right? Like I think you touched on something very important there, which
Mm.
is it's not like at the end of the day, sure, You can have a beautiful looking film where the theory of film where every frame is an art piece, right? Like, um, every frame's a painting, I think is the term, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
you can do that. You can have that approach to film, but I've also, and I'm sure you've had the experience as well, I've also seen films that are beautifully shot. Follow that to a T, and I'm like, wow, I don't know what the budget was on this or how they pulled it off, but this is gorgeous. But I will never watch it again, and I just like it. I leave feeling like, eh, that was pretty. When it comes to, so we've skirted around it a little bit, but the idea of camp, right?
Oh,
And how
yeah.
camp is its own art form. I mean, we saw that with the Met Gala 2 years ago or three,
3 years,
3 years ago.
3 years ago, and they had an exhibit on camp as well, like the
Oh, did
Met, where you
they?
could like go. Yeah, and it was all like camp fashion, and they had like all these. Yeah, that the camp fashion exhibit was. Oh gosh, that was like 2019, I think. That was
Okay.
2018, 2019, pre-COVID. But yes, camp.
Yeah. So, and I think that's something we should absolutely touch upon because the tie-in between horror and horror comedy, and then theater and camp, like that's a very tight Venn diagram, I feel. So,
Oh yes. And weirdly, musical theater does intersect in there
yes,
because
yes,
if you're looking for like transgressive or like horror film adaptations in theater, it's 75% of it is musical theater. I mean, like I saw Teeth, the musical adaptation of Teeth a few months ago. Like,
yeah, yeah,
but
no,
that's a
absolutely.
different.
Well, I mean, speaking of that, so I'm based just outside of Detroit, right? So we have
Yeah.
Evil Dead the musical every year downtown. And we had RoboCop the musical, and I know every year at the college I went to, they were doing Kerry the musical. So,
Musical. Toxic Avenger has a musical adaptation. Like Trauma, Lloyd Kaufman's three rules on set are like I announced those. Like I did that just a few weeks ago. The like his three rules on set are hold on, it's safety to human beings. That's rule number one. And then I add on that means both physical and psychological safety. That so like so no assholes on set basically. Rule number two, safety to other people's property. And I was like, that also includes our location, because I have learned a lot about film insurance on this most recent project. And then rule number three, his is make a good movie, and then I changed it to make a fun movie. But that's Lloyd Kaufman. Like
yeah,
how like you hear a million stories about like toxic dangerous things happen on like studio pictures, and then you go to like the king of like the trash B movies and he's like safety first.
right, right. So we've talked about your background, we've talked about theater. Let's talk about your work. So, I was lucky enough to meet you, and we actually had a little chat on stage at Queer Fair in North Carolina last
Queer
October.
Fear, what
Yeah,
an amazing festival that
a
was.
wonderful festival. And any filmmakers listening to this who are looking to submit to festivals, that is definitely one to keep on your radar. It was one of my favorite I've been to. Actually, when you and I met, you told me you had seen my short previously at another festival last
At
year.
Midsummer Scream, the Screaming Room at Midsummer Scream, which is also a really, really awesome festival. They're really different from each other, but they're both like wonderful experiences.
Yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend last year because that's over in Long Beach, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. But so that is a full-on horror convention with its own film festival, right?
Correct. There's Midsummer Scream, which is like this massive, massive horror attraction. It's very haunted attraction forward, which is actually cool because there's a whole level just like filled with like these little tiny haunted attractions. You can like these like walkthroughs, these maze walkthroughs that you can go through. And then on another level, in another section of the convention is the Screaming Room Film Festival. Big recommendation to go to attend that if you can, or even if you're not in the film festival, to just buy a ticket and go to Midsummer Scream. I'm not being paid by them. I just really enjoyed it.
Good. No, that's wonderful. And one thing I really like about the Screaming Room at Midsummer Scream is that it's a very accessible film festival to submit to, because I believe submissions, they are still only like $2 or something like that.
It's
Like
ridiculously cheap. Yeah.
ridiculously cheap. Definitely one to, I mean, granted, with the lower submission fees, competition is going to be probably a little bit more fierce. But if you don't have a lot of money to submit to festivals and you believe in a project that you want to put on the circuit, that's definitely one I would check out. So yeah, okay, but I was lucky enough in North Carolina to see your short, Strangers on the A Train. Yeah.
Yes.
So, which is hilarious. It was so much fun to watch in a packed theater because everyone's reactions, like, were visceral, and it was so funny and so well timed because for a film with no dialogue, kind of, right? It it it's just, it tells a very unique, like, perspective switchy story, and that's where the tension builds in a very humorous way. So could you talk a little bit about Strangers on the A Train?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Strangers on the A Train is set on the New York City subway, and it follows two people listening to two very different podcasts. We have a guy who's listening to a very like bro-y pickup artist podcast that's like, you find that girl and you ask her out. No, you do it. And he spots a very pretty girl and he's like, yeah, I will go, I'm gonna keep listening to this podcast. I'm gonna ask her out. Cut to the girl. She's, of course, listening to a true crime podcast, just hearing about, murder, just how pretty girls are murdered all the time. Just murder, murder, murder. And of course, their worldviews collide in a very sort of unfortunate way. And that's it.
Yeah,
In
yeah,
6 minutes.
in 6 minutes. But honestly, you tell a full story in those 6 minutes, and like there are different levels. There's a whole, where it builds up to a climax, and then we get resolution afterwards, and it was so much fun to watch.
Oh,
I
thank
think,
you.
yeah, absolutely. I think it's really interesting, because rewatching it in the context of, like, oh wow, I think this speaks to something even larger than the comedy it is, but like where where people are with like media consumption in general, right?
Mm.
And I think that's, you know, somebody listening to one thing and somebody listening to the voice that's telling them the exact opposite. And I think that's really interesting to play off of in this way. You know, it was very, very funny, the cut between the podcasts, because it's so based in reality, right?
Well, I mean, I definitely took inspiration from a summer where I was listening to a lot of true crime podcasts. And at first, like, a few summers ago, I had a job that was kind of like a longish commute, and I was on the subway a lot. And at first, I discovered that these really like juicy, horrible true crime podcasts made my commute fly by, you know? They're so compelling. Oh, what happened to her? Oh my God, who could have done it? But then I started to listen to them more and more, and they started to get like more violent and more skeezy. And then like my commute got like scarier, and my anxiety levels started to rise. And I was like, oh no, this is coloring how I see I have to like pull back, or I'm gonna just be living in this like hyper vigilant, like anyone's a serial killer, like vibe on the train. I was like, all right. And then I was like, oh, hmm, it's kind of funny. There's something
Okay.
there.
So yeah, absolutely pulled from real experience then. That's
Yep.
wonderful.
Yep.
So you shot on an actual train.
Oh, yes. So, Strangers on the A Train. So, okay, it started a few years ago as a funny idea for a short film, you know, and uh, okay, some very quick background that kind of led to Strangers on the A Train was I was doing mostly theater up until COVID. My training, like grad school, was very theater forward, but I did have film training a little bit here and there. But I was all theater all the way. COVID hit. All of my theater directing career plans were thrown out the window. I was very sad. I was working a job I didn't like, didn't know what to do. Then some happy accidents occurred, and I joined an indie film collective here in New York City. I met some other filmmakers. I started to build my network a little bit, and then I suddenly had some resources where I could make a little short film. Strangers on the A Train was like $300 to make. Like that was like compared to what I just shot a few. It was like it was made by like 6 people. No one was getting paid. We didn't have like insurance. Now I'm looking back on it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm glad everyone was okay. Should always buy insurance for these things. Um, but I paid everyone with like lunch and pastries. It wasn't even a full day of shooting. It was just, we got on the subway and because Strangers on the A Train is all podcast audio that we could record afterwards. We didn't need to take any sound equipment on the subway. It was all DIY. A huge inspiration for me was Lucio Fulci, who famously snuck onto the Brooklyn Bridge to film zombies approaching New York City, where him and his crew, they didn't think they were going to be able to get away with very much. They were prepared to just get one quick shot and get out. But it was the 70s in New York City and nobody stopped them. So they got these like really dramatic, amazing shots of like zombies walking towards Manhattan on the Brooklyn Bridge. And I kind of looked at that and I was like, okay, if he can do it, I can do it. Let's get on the subway and we'll just film people listening to their podcasts.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. And in fact, New York being what it is, because, we did have a lot of plans in place where, like, if anyone tries to talk to us and if anything seems unsafe, get off the train and blah, blah, blah. But honestly, most people saw us, like, filming and they just were like, nope, going to the other side of the train. I don't want any part of this. Not going anywhere near what these people are doing. Just boop.
Well, and I think that's so funny you say that because I feel like the outsider perspective of New York is like, oh God, if I went on a train in New York with a camera, like there could be people there who would interrupt and blah blah blah. And it's like, no, when you're on trains in New York, nobody's like very rarely are people trying to talk to you. Most people are trying to be as far away from anyone else as possible, right?
Yeah, exactly. They're just like, oh, I don't know. What is this? Oh, no.
No, unless they're about to start singing a song in the middle of the train so you can cash app them $5. Nobody's really trying to talk to you. No, that's so funny. Okay, so you said some things that I want to go further into.
Yeah, let's do
So
it.
the first of which is production insurance,
Oh,
right?
yes.
And I
Mm-hmm.
would love to have you talk about your experience a little bit with that, which route you decided to like go in pre-production, um, and if you wouldn't mind giving like what kind of location you were insuring, or was it multiple locations, etc. Because I think production insurance is a big one that a lot of filmmakers starting out don't uh, don't have any experience with.
Yeah. And like when you're getting production insurance, there's so many different paths and there are a bunch of different companies you can go with. I really relied on my network for insurance recommendations. There were a few different insurance companies that were recommended to me. So based on those recommendations, I went on the websites and I like looked at the various things I needed and I found what was right for what my needs were. I felt really lucky though, because the company that I ended up going with were really wonderful and really communicative, especially when I kept buying the wrong things from them. And I also like had to make a lot of stupid mistakes to learn from in this whole endeavor. So like I definitely went with the cheapest option and then realized that the cheapest they would be like, yeah, so the thing that you bought is not like looking at what you've like submitted for, it's not actually what you need because if you're doing like equipment rentals, you actually need this one instead. I'd be like, oh, gotta buy this instead. And then I learned that when you're getting production insurance, I mean, for me, I really looked at it as like insurance for like general liability insurance to cover like the people on set. Like if anyone is hurt, I want to make sure that they are covered. So that's like the first thing. The second thing is the location. If anything like harms our location, cover that. We were filming at a rehearsal studio, like a dance studio, theater studio space. So that was nice because that had like built-in resources anyway. But I still wanted that covered. Even though I think they probably have their own insurance too. And like third, the thing that I made a lot of mistakes about, and I really learned the hard way, was insurance for equipment and equipment rentals. Because originally I purchased insurance for my two dates of filming, but if you're renting equipment, you need to buy half-day insurance for the day you pick up the equipment and the day you drop off the equipment. So you actually need like 4 days of insurance. And this like really lovely company, they were so kind, but they would just email me again and they'd be like, you also want to do this? You will need to buy an extra thing if you want to get that. I'd be like, oops, hold on, charge me, it's fine. And then lastly, so just even figure out like, okay, how many days do I actually need insurance was not the amount I originally thought. And like what I was getting. Okay, so they really talked me through it and helped me. But the last thing that I did learn the hard way was, so the day before my film shoot a few weeks ago, we lost our sound guy. He was fine. He was scheduling things. So, but it was like the day before and I was like, oh no.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah, it's very hard. I was like, I knew something would go wrong the day before the shoot, and then now it's happened. What am I gonna do? And I got a lot of recommendations for a sound guy really quickly, and then our DP actually knew someone who was really great. We brought him in, but because we changed sound, like our sound person who was bringing in their own equipment and had like needed their own COI certificate of insurance, I had to have the insurance people rush me a new like COI like literally like 5 a.m. before it's like 5 a.m. we're filming in like 9 hours, or not 9 hours, like a few hours, whatever. They were like, yes, we can get this to you, but there's a rush fee if you need something like a few hours before your film shoot. And I was like, that's fine. It was all very reasonable, but I did learn that that's all stuff that if you do it last minute, it's a lot more expensive.
Legit. Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I think that's such a helpful thing for people to hear because it's so important. I mean, whether you have filed your production company as a business or not, because that's a whole thing too when you get into like LLCs or incorporating eventually. But if you're just an individual and you are renting equipment, you are making this project, like you are the individual in charge a lot of the times of the project, unless you're like working with a producer, then there can be, but it gets so messy and that's such a gray area if contracts aren't signed or something like that. But if it's your project and you're writing, directing, and partially producing your own work, and somebody gets hurt on your set, that's on you.
Yeah, you're
like,
fucked.
yeah,
Sorry
yeah,
to be blunt about it, but like, yep, you're the one in trouble.
exactly, exactly. You're paying for a location. Why it just makes so much sense to protect yourself because, like we've learned in theater, if things can go wrong, a lot of times they might, right? Maybe not people getting hurt. Like if you're running a safe set and taking normal precautions, you should be safe a lot of the time. But accidents do happen, and maybe that
Well,
accident.
no, but even if somebody just like, everybody is fine and nobody is hurt, but someone like breaks like a camera lens, or it's like, oh, you went on ShareGrid and you rented this microphone. You're like, oh, this was like a $50 rental. It's a $500 microphone. It's broken.
Right.
Like, luckily that didn't happen, but like at the end of the day, what, paying an extra $500 for insurance so you don't have to spend $5,000 because somebody like tripped on a trash can because they were like, they weren't looking where they were going, and now you have to, yeah, it's just so much better to make sure you're properly protected.
100%. 100%. Especially once you get into the realm of like features or like trying to sell anything, whether that's a short or a feature, a lot of production companies will not buy anything that is not insured.
Yeah.
Because even if, there's no active suit pending, if somebody was like, oh, you sold this film, well, actually, I hurt myself, and, like, I see that you sold it, you can pay me out on it, the studio doesn't want to be responsible for that, the distribution company doesn't want to be responsible for that or be tied to that. So it's when I think it is something you should absolutely invest in, no matter where you're at. And there's many different outlets and companies that do it, and there's many different ways to work around, how you want to ensure your production, but having some base level of that, I think, is very important.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
let's talk about this film.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The one that yeah. Okay. So, yeah, it's kind of funny. I've been like talking about this film, but like, you don't know what it is. You don't know what it's about. I don't know. Yes. So it's called With Iron Teeth. It is very, very loosely inspired by the Baba Yaga myth from
Ooh.
Slavic folklore. Are you familiar with Baba Yaga,
Oh
or
yeah.
Baba Iga, as they say in the Slavic countries? Yeah. So the idea for it came a few years ago, actually during COVID, when I was pitching a bunch of like different little like horror one act ideas to a theater company way back when. And I just was like free writing, and I was like, let me just come up with like 5 horror ideas. And one of them was just called Don't Fuck with Baba Yaga.
I love that.
And then I like was like, and then that wasn't the one that ended up getting developed. So I was like, okay. And then I just put that aside, and I was like, oh, Baba Yaga, there's something there. And then I don't even know like why, when or why or how I started writing this short. When you're like, you just like write a bunch of stuff and then you look back and you're like, when did I write that? I don't know when I decided to make that a short film. I don't know. It just did. It just suddenly I had 4 pages, and then those 4 pages became 12 pages. Yeah. So I had been developing a short film script. It follows a woman who works at a senior community center teaching computer skills to senior citizens by day, but by night she is scamming those senior citizens using like cyber hacking to pay for her love of fancy things. And then she and a girl who she picks up at a club decide to rob the wrong old lady, basically. And then horrible things happen from there.
I love it. I love it. That's such
Yeah.
a fun premise. All right.
Yeah.
I'm very, very interested to see it. So when you and I were originally going to set up this interview, it was
Yeah.
like, hey,
Oh, right. Yes. Back when I was like, insurance, crew, pre-production. Oh,
that was
yeah.
it. I was like, oh hey, do you want to do an interview? You're like, yes, but I have to do it in the next week because I'm about to go into production on this next thing, and I got I got to do pre-production, and then I got production, and it's all back to back, and I'm going to be going hard at it for 2 or 3 weeks. So I was like, we can wait till after. That's fine. I don't want to stress you out even more. But talk a little bit about your pre-production process for this.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you for being so gracious with me as I was like a crazed human. It was kind of a bonkers time because I had pre-production for the short film and I was like working a full-time job and there was travel and there was like a million like ridiculous personal things kept happening. Like we thought one of our cat, like my partner and I, we have these two elderly cats, and we thought one of them was dying, and the vets were like preparing us, and then they were like, "Oh, never mind, she's fine," and we were like, "What?" And then I was like, "Ah!" So like all these things are happening at once, and pre-production for this short film was one of them, and pre-production was like the fun thing to be doing, but there were just so many moving pieces on top of everything else. Just because I was partially producing, I did have producing support. I was very, very lucky with the short film because I did receive a community arts grant from my local community arts nonprofit called Inwood Artworks that are really, really wonderful. I live in the Inwood neighborhood of Manhattan, and they're really supportive of artists and filmmakers. They do the Inwood Film Festival every year. And so I received a grant from them. But the one stipulation is that when you receive this money, you have to do it within 1 year. Like you have to make the film within 1 year. And I received the money in December. So I was like, okay, April, then that'll give me enough time for like editing. And so it was like, okay, we got to do this. But I did learn that you should not schedule your film shoot the weekend before taxes are due. Because
Yeah.
like doing like working so hard on pre-production and like juggling all your different like collaborators and all like location and all the like getting your actors ready and getting it all together and then doing that and then like the next day having to do your taxes is like the worst feeling. And not knowing how much money you're gonna owe for taxes when you have to like pay a bunch of people a bunch of grant money. Yeah, that was bad. So filmmakers listening out there, never schedule your film shoot during tax season. Don't do it.
There you go. From April 1st to April 16th should be a blackout date on your production calendar.
Blackout.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's funny to have you ask like how that pre-production process was because in my mind, I sort of like it's like I'm trying to think back on it, and it's just like scene missing.
Yeah.
It's just
No.
like
Well, when you're in it, sometimes you get that tunnel vision of, okay, I have to do A, B, C, D, E, F, and it's like, okay, A, B, C, D, F, G, and it's just one
yeah,
after another, and I totally understand how that can be. And we talked about production insurance, we talked about your casting for it a little bit. Location, so was it one location, the ballerina studio?
yeah. So one location. So there's another community. There's a community center not far from where I live. It's the Northern Manhattan Alliance for the Arts, and they have a studio space that is specifically for Upper Manhattan based artists, and you can become a member, and then you can get like really like cheap subsidized rehearsal space. It's
Nice.
really amazing. It's sort of like this little like secret in Uptown. I feel like a lot of New Yorkers don't know about it. And a lot of uptown artists don't know about it, and they need to know about it. It's really cool. But it had the look of a senior center. It was very easy to set dress because it has that kind of that lived-in rehearsal studio feeling. But we used one location. We did have to double it for a nightclub and the bathroom of a nightclub, when I say nightclub, I mean like a queer rave party. So, that was
Got it.
we did a lot with lighting. That was our space. We had a really wonderful time there. One of our days of filming was like the whole space studio was like not booked. It was a Sunday, so no one was there except us. The first day of filming, though, there was like a kids theater group one room over from us. So we definitely had an incident where like so many children were swarming like a bunch of candy that we'd left out on the craft services table, and we were like, oops. And it was fine. We didn't mind if the kids took the candy, but they kept like appearing in the back of shots and like being noisy, and we were like, we made a mistake.
We made a mistake.
Oh.
Yeah.
There is one thing though, really quickly, I want to just touch on because you asked about the pre-production process, and feel like such an asshole if I don't make sure to say this, is that the best thing about this film shoot, and the thing that I think was the most amount of work for pre-production but really paid off, was finding amazing collaborators and amazing crew and just really generous, skilled people. Like a directing teacher of mine from grad school, he would always say, like, when you're the director, you should be the weakest link. When you're like building your team, you should be the weakest link in your chain. Make sure everyone around you is better than you. And I felt that on this project, everyone was just so talented and so gifted and so kind. And I think like cultivating those relationships in pre-production was really important.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's such good advice. That's such good advice. Yeah, definitely make yourself build a team that's stronger than you. Yeah, 100%. Everyone should be aiming to do that. And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the collaborative process of everything, right? When it comes to making a film, I think that's wonderful. I do have a question just
Mm.
because, so you're talking about this space and that it's like a studio space that you can rent.
Oh yeah.
Is, does this happen to be the same studio space that you used for Fright Cardio?
It is. It is the exact same studio space I used for Break Cardio. Yeah. Yeah, it's
So
my
that's a
second time filming there. Actually,
nice.
my third, because I produced a friend's sci-fi short there last summer. So I've been there 3 times for a film shoot purpose. Yeah.
Got
Yeah,
it. And real
100%.
quick, let's talk about Fright Cardio because it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So it's the full title is Fright Cardio Fit Not
Fit
Bit.
not bit. Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh, I need to give that short some love. I need to submit that around. That's kind of lingering right now. Uh yeah. Should I introduce Fright Cardio for your
Please,
listeners?
please.
So Fright Cardio is it's a zombie themed workout video that you would find on YouTube. It's designed to be like just a fun, spooky themed, zombie themed exercise video, but then the video gets interrupted by zombies and like it's like a YouTube fitness video getting interrupted by a zombie film, and then the two collide. Um, I made it specifically for a DIY film festival last November that the Indie Film Collective I'm a part of does every year. They always do a film festival along a theme, and their theme that this past year was Last Day on Earth. So the zombie apocalypse seemed like the way to go for me at least. No one else
Yeah.
did zombie apocalypse, so I was like, okay, go. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to make, but I feel like I haven't been sending that around because I've just been like, too many things are going on, and I'm like, oh shit, I gotta let people watch that.
It's a good one. It's a lot of fun. I love stylistically how you juxtaposed the reality versus like the video of it, right? Because I
Yeah,
mean, like you said, you're watching a video, like a YouTube video, a workout video. So when those scenes are happening and you're supposed to be the viewer, like watching this video through the lens of the camera, essentially, it's very bright and very like it feels like 80s workout video, right? Where it's,
yeah,
everything's bright and whatever, and then as things like start happening and the reality of the situation starts to impede and break into this space, we get perspective switches where suddenly it is this like dark, gritty, like, horror of it, and then like switch back to, nope, we're doing the video,
yes,
and yeah,
yeah, yeah. I think that's something that I love as a filmmaker. Like I love stylistic shifts. I love things that just like break genre, break convention. I was looking a lot at the TV show Kevin Can F Himself, which is just
yes,
chef's kiss, genius. And like kind of going back to camp, I feel like my favorite type of camp is camp with like a little bit of bite. Oh, a little bit of bite to it. Oh, that wasn't, I didn't even mean that to be a zombie pun. Um, but like camp with like like camp that's almost satire, where you're like, is it camp? Is it satire? I just love that where you're like, ah. And it was really fun to like mock like YouTube exercise videos and to mock fitness culture, but also like from the perspective of someone who like definitely like does a yoga with Adriene video every day, which I do. So it's like mock it, but I'm in it, and that was fun to play with, and just throw some zombies in.
No, 100%, 100%. And like, I think, especially even pre-YouTube, I don't know anyone who didn't do Tybo or something,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
right, right. No, that's so funny. And I think it's definitely I think camp is inherent to the workout video culture, right? Like it's got to be. There's
Yes.
got to be. You can't have an industry that one of the lead faces people can pull up like from memory is Richard Simmons and
Richard
not think
Simmons.
like and not think that camp is part like intrinsically of that genre, right?
Sweating to the oldies.
Sweating to the oldies. Oh man. Okay, so we talked about your shorts, we talked about what you got coming up next. I would like you to tell the listeners, one of the questions I had asked you before the show was best advice that you've either given or gotten. Um, could you share that with our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are two pieces of advice that I really held on to recently. This short film I just shot with Iron Teeth. It was like my biggest, most expensive short film that I've ever done. So there were a lot of times where the stakes felt really high, like having like for me, a big crew, a big cast, decent amount of money. But I remembered something my directing teacher said to me a few years ago when I was complaining to him about like something, and I was like this and this and this, and I was getting really mad. And he was like, "Rachel, why don't you just try lowering the stakes?" Like that was it. He was like, just lower them. And it was like, oh yeah, maybe like lowering the stakes and telling yourself, like it doesn't have to be the most important thing. I think that was really helpful to be like, you know what? It's just this is where things are now. And maybe the next thing it will feel more important, but it's okay. It's okay if things go wrong and you're gonna deal with it. So that's a really important piece of advice. Lower the stakes. It also just makes you nicer to work with. It's so hard and it's important to work with people who care, but I think we all know that feeling where we start to like get a little bit too like latched onto something and people are like, "Ooh, I don't want to be around Rachel, she's a little stressed out." So when you're just like, maybe it's not so like important, it makes you like just more people want to be around you, which is good for collaboration, and also good for your partner who watches you deal with it. um, and then the other piece of advice, I don't know if this is advice or if it's more just like words to live by, but there's that idea of good, fast, and cheap, and you can only have two of the three at any given time. And I think that that's something that I was thinking a lot about on my short and definitely proved to be true. That, we, our whole team, we worked really hard to get things ready early, and like our team was really good. And I started the process a lot earlier than some people would, just taking the time months in advance because I knew I didn't have the world's largest budget. So I wanted it to be good and I wanted it to be cheap, so it had to be slow. But the day before the film shoot, when we lost our sound guy, I was like, good, fast, or cheap, and this has to be fast. So, and I don't want it to be bad. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna like fix this and bring someone in, but it's not going to be as cheap as if I had found someone ages ago who like, would
Right.
do this as a favor.
100%. No, 100%. And I think that's a really good piece of advice for filmmakers though, is like, okay, so you want to make something. Well, what are you willing to sacrifice? Right? I get that you're excited about doing this. You want to get up and rolling tomorrow. And if you're already crewed up or like whatever, just you got friends you can call, great, great. Is it going to be the best work you're going to put out? Probably not, but if you just got an idea and need to get it out, great. That's fine. But if you sit with it, give it the time to be good. If you don't have the resources to put it out fast, I think that is wonderful advice. It's wonderful advice. So, yeah, no, that's wonderful. So Rachel, thank you. Thank you so much for talking and sharing all of your knowledge with
Oh my
with
goodness.
our audience. I really appreciate it. I think a lot of our conversation will be very helpful to some filmmakers who are just starting out or looking to get into things. So thank you again for that. How can they find you and keep up with your work, and learn more or hear more once it starts hitting the festival with Iron Teeth?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, thank you because this has been such a blast. And I think that everyone who makes a short film should, once you like finish shooting, you should like do a podcast with Neil and like jump on because it's like really wonderful and like really cathartic and like get it out. So if folks want to follow me, I am on Instagram. That's where I post most of my film related things. My Instagram handle is R as in Rachel, F as in fire, Kerry.
Thank you again for being here, and I am sure I can't wait to see more of your work, and hopefully our viewers can catch it as well very soon.
Yay, thank you so much for having me. This has been awesome.
And thank you for listening. Make sure to give Rachel a follow on her socials to keep up with all the amazing things she's been up to. Thank you to those who have already followed and given 5-star reviews on our show. If you haven't, please consider doing so, as it's the best way to support this platform and the truly independent artists we feature. Follow us on Instagram at Midnight Horror Picture Show. Our theme music is by Nick Ferrari at Nick_Ferrari on Instagram. Midnight Horror Picture Show is proudly a part of the Hearith Podcast Network. Check out our sister show, Dead Pine Archives, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Our next episode will be on Halloween with a very special guest. Until then, stay spooky and keep supporting indie horror.